This is Culture, Communication, and Brand Moments with Shelby Joe Long, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet, hear their stories, and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their success into your life and business. Culture, Communication, and Brand Moments is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Shelby Joe Long.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast today. I'm Shelby Joe Long. I am Senior Vice President of the Strategic Advisor Board and CEO of my own business, Business Dynamics. And I love having the opportunity to be on this interview to be able to talk to individuals that are making a difference in their own businesses and making a difference in their business community. And today I have the opportunity to also talk to individuals with their own business, but that are part of this larger community effort within their own city. And I think it's a great model for how we should think about business and how we should think about how to engage with other businesses. But to give you a little background, I live in Billings, Montana, small town. Well, it's the biggest town in Montana, but it is still a small town, about 120,000 people. A very active business community here. I've had the opportunity to interact with Colton and Abby, who are on the interview today, in multiple settings, usually within the Chamber of Commerce and Next Gen, which they're going to talk about today. And I know them individually. They each have their own businesses. They each have their own genius that they have formed their business around. And they each have a passion for pushing this community model forward. And I'm excited to learn a little bit more about this model and have them introduce it. But it kind of fits into our whole theme with the Strategic Advisor Board, is that you can't do everything on your own. And you shouldn't do everything on your own. You should be involved with a community that can help you grow and progress and just be a better business and be more involved with the community. So just as an overview, very lengthy introduction for this interview, but I will introduce Colton Wilhaven and Abby Wink, and I'll have them introduce themselves, and then we'll get into talking about their business. So Abby, why don't you go first?
Well, thank you, Shelby. Thanks for having us. We're excited that we get to be here today and we get to be visiting with you because we have a lot of great things that we want to talk about, and we know that you want to talk about too. So we're excited about that. So I'm also here in Billings. I work for Payne West Insurance. So even though I don't essentially own my own business exactly right for tax purposes, I still kind of own my business within Payne West. I am an employee health and benefits executive. And so I help businesses with their insurance planning and helping them put together their employee benefits planning. So I actually recently had a career change. Before that, I was a financial advisor at a different firm and did own my own business there, and still really like that model of being able to have the autonomy and the flexibility. So that's what brought me to Payne West, and that I still get to continue to help people. I didn't think insurance was going to be what I chose to do, but it is something that is is a passion of mine, and I love that I get to help people in that way. But aside from that, Colton and I co-chaired Billings Next Gen together, which is a young professionals group here in town. And I've been a part of the leadership team for probably 3.5 years. And then this is my first year as co-chair here with Colton.
Great. Entrepreneurship is in your blood for sure. And understanding the importance of building a community and being able to transition in a community, those are all so important things to talk about, and how you've used your own background and your own genius to fit into that career path. So that's great to hear about. So Colton, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Shelby. I appreciate you having us on here. And so I'm in a room of highly successful individuals, so I hope I can rise to the occasion. So my name is Colton Wilhaven. I'm born and from Billings, Montana. Was raised here, lived here, went away for school, came back. Feel really grateful and pretty blessed to be here. Not everybody from Billings, or when you're in your hometown, you can say that, but I do really feel a part of this community, not only from the standpoint of working, but also being involved in groups like Next Gen. And so My daytime job is I work for a firm called Buchanan Capital. It's a wealth management firm here in Billings. A boutique firm of roughly, there's 6 of us here in the office. And the firm has been going for about 20 plus years with great principals that have been here for 40 plus and 25 plus years. And I've been here for a little over 3.5. I originally started my career in banking at a regional bank here in Billings, First Interstate Bank. And actually, Next Gen, which we'll talk about, is a huge reason why I'm in the role I am in today. But like Shelby said, entrepreneurship definitely resides in the job that I have. A lot of autonomy, a lot of flexibility, but also a big part of that too is the team approach too that we have here. And excited to like dive into that a little bit more. The team approach that we use at Next Gen, and obviously with the group of entrepreneurs that you have with this podcast, with your businesses, Shelby. I think of the entrepreneurship as you think of it as an individual, but there's a team behind you. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into that. And just grateful for the opportunity to talk about Billings Next Gen. Like Abby said, it's a young professionals group operated by the Chamber of Commerce here in Billings. Out of the need that they needed to get young professionals involved in the community. They had a great participation of that 35 to 60-ish people. Well, where's everybody that's younger than 40? Where are those people? They're here in Billings, but they're not doing anything. But they are, or maybe they're not being recognized, or how do you really corral those efforts? And so I'm excited to talk about Next Gen. I've been a part of it for roughly since I've been back in Billings. And so I don't want to date myself. I feel old already. But I think it's been roughly like 5 or 6 years I've been a part of Next Gen. And I've been a part of just being a member all the way to being an ambassador for Next Gen to now co-leading with Abby. And we just have a really great leadership team. And my job is not to mess it up. And so I feel like very grateful to be where I'm at, not only professionally, but personally. So excited to jump in and talk more.
I gotta take myself off mute. That's a great introduction, and I love the team. And it seems that you have kind of followed you like working with other people. You enjoy being in that kind of community, and I think that's important as an entrepreneur to understand that it's not solo. And it's really challenging. You can succeed as a solo entrepreneur, but understanding whatever area of entrepreneurship you're in, your own business, understanding that A, you need to make connections for clients, but then B, making connections with other professionals, young professionals and other professionals in your industry are key for really elevating your business to the next level. So that's two very key things. And Colton, I mentioned this before the podcast, but I think it's important to mention too, that 3 years ago, we were on a startup team together. I think it was hosted by the Big Sky Economic Development, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, it was really fun. We got to be on the same team together. It just kind of fits into the whole team conversation. But we came up with an idea for our team and then we executed it in one weekend. It was a mad weekend, but we had a lot of fun with it. So it was we have crossed paths a few times. It's been
no, I can't believe that was 3 years ago, and it was super fun. For those that aren't familiar with like Techstars on the podcast, but it's really trying to create like a innovator entrepreneurship like weekend, and essentially you go from start to finish building a business. And it can be anything, some people have a very technology focused, obviously. Some people have a very like hard product focus. Some people have a service idea. And so it was really cool. The personalities in the room, the unbelievable skill sets. I was just trying to follow along the whole weekend and just like soak it in because there was a lot of great entrepreneurs or really up and coming entrepreneurs. And so for those, any like entrepreneurial or startup weekend, I highly encourage it. Even if you don't have a business idea, you have to do it because the amount of ways you learn how to start a business is really amazing because, I'm in a financial industry business, old, stodgy kind of, but hearing somebody like build an app from start to finish or like a service business, really interesting to hear that. So I would highly encourage to the listeners to Startup Weekend, Techstars, dig into that.
Well, and there's so many opportunities to do that, and just being aware and knowing about those opportunities are so key. And I think they're different in every city, but there are some things. So So let's dive in and talk about Next Gen. It is something that's unique to Billings, but it's also modeled after something. So another city. So Abby, why don't you start by telling us about the foundation of Next Gen and start to give us an idea of what Next Gen is all about, since we're here to highlight that today.
Yeah, so Billings Next Gen started 8 years ago, and the way that it all came together was, and to follow up to what Colton said. So at the time, the president of the Billings Chamber here in Billings, he was kind of looking ahead at what the future was going to be at Billings, and realized that there were a lot of young professionals and there was a lot of voices missing, I think, from the table. And he came up with the idea of Next Gen along with several other young professionals here in the community. And it was really an idea of how can we get young professionals more involved here in the community? And then how can we make sure that we retain them over a period of time, then to join the chamber and get more involved with the chamber itself. And so Next Gen was born and it was created. Like I said, it was 8 years ago. And since then, we've had different leadership team members come and go. We've had our members age out, new members who have come into the community who are now a part of Next Gen. And it has just been a really great program that the chamber has implemented for us because it has done so many different things. So for young professionals, the three things that we really like to highlight on are access, education, and connection. So typically within the Billings community, or maybe with any community, right, you might not always have the right connections, or you might not just know someone, like the president of the bank or whatever that looks like. So Next Gen exists to create connections for young professionals. And that's something that we work really hard to make sure that we do. We also want to make sure that we provide our members with access, right, to community leaders or to places, businesses or nonprofits doing really great things here in town. And then we want to make sure that we're providing some sort of ongoing education so that our members continue to develop personally and professionally.
Yeah, that's great to know a little bit about the background. Colton, can you tell us about some of the activities and events? It sounds like education's a big key and the networking. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how important that is for young professionals?
Yeah, thanks, Abby and Shelby. So like Abby mentioned, connection, access, education. So I'll kind of dilute each one individually to kind of add some clarity. So connection, those typically tend to manifest themselves in after hours events or meetups, or kind of round tables. And so, different sizes of different groups, because obviously we all kind of, how we fill our cup, either, let's say a one-on-one connection or a group, extroverts, introverts, we offer a lot of opportunities in that sense. And, I think it's important, obviously, the old adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so I think there's, even in a virtual world or a hybrid world, it's still the case of that, of the connections you have. And so I've been pleasantly surprised about how many people that are part of Next Gen that are hybrid workers or are at, working, in Billings, live in Billings, maybe have a significant other working, but they work totally remote. They're part of Next Gen. And so they obviously find value in that connection and being part of a community. It's a lot about community. And I feel like we're always trying to find that, whether that's with our friends, our church, our activities, hobbies, all those things. And so that connection piece is one. Access, like Abby mentioned, is mainly kind of the behind the scenes. We have a seat at the table with our local community leaders. So whether that's the mayor, the county commissioners, city councilmen, obviously those are different at different cities across the country, but the people that lead your city, we have a seat at the table. And I think it's forward thinking of them to be like, we value these because the issues that affect a 25-year-old, 30-year-old compared to even a 45-year-old are completely different. Housing, childcare. What do we have for arts and music, and what do we have for activities? I think all the community of Billings, as well as communities across our region or competitors, we have to be thinking about that because it's easier than ever to travel. Either, so traveling isn't a barrier. People can work anywhere. And so what does Billings have to offer? And so through NextGen, we try to offer to ours, behind the scenes tour of the rodeo. The PBR is coming to town. So the professional bull riding series is going to be here. National event, they come to Billings. How can we allow our members to go and connect with them or learn about the event, or how does that event work, or how do you host an event like that? Those are just some of the things, behind the scenes of the orchestra, the symphony, in Billings. And so those are type of things of like access. And so having a seat at the table, which we think is important. And it's hard to find that access maybe as a young professional, because maybe don't have the confidence, or maybe people just aren't thinking about you. You have the idea. I always think about, look at all the people that have below the age of 30 that have started multi-billion-dollar companies. We should deserve to have a seat at the table, and why can't we? And so there's that access. And then the education part is really developing professionally. So a lot of large organizations have leadership training programs that you follow, and you're able to progress to the next level, get promoted. When you tend to work at a smaller firm like Buchanan Capital, like myself, or if you're an entrepreneur, you want some professional development, but where do you find that? LinkedIn Learning, there's other things that are great tools, but how do we get that maybe in-person leadership training? And so we offer programs once a year through that, as well as I think another education piece is connecting colleges, students, and high school students with young professionals. And so whether that's through mentorship series, whether that's, you going to the school and talking about your business, talking about your life, talking about your kind of progression in your journey through your career, that kind of piece falls under there. So a lot of ways for people to get involved, and a lot of, it's what you make of it, since there's so much opportunity.
Sure, there's so much benefit to it. I'll just to kind of add on to that whole thing, the whole discussion. I'm also a professor at a local college here at Rocky Mountain College here in Billings, and it's been really fun to have my students, to encourage my students to go to events and to encourage them to talk to people in the community, because I feel, at least in my perspective and working with students of that age, that they're not really thinking about building connections or what those connections can do for discovering what your future career is going to be, or even connecting with potential clients, or plugging you into a community that already exists to be able to professionally develop you. So there's some really interesting connections there. And I think that's so critically important for the next generation that's going into business, is to do that. So I think that's an amazing goal to have. And I think it's a very important connection for you all to have too. And I think that's a great mission. And the other thing too, is that kind of connects into the whole mission of NextGen, like train or educate and empower the next generation. So when they're just starting businesses, so they can become more involved with the community. I think all of those things are so important. And for many of our listeners who are not in Billings, Montana, I'm sure that this exists in other places too, but it's important to think about how can we as a community develop professionals to be able to give back to our community and to be a part of what we do and to educate the next generation. And and then you're 45 and you've aged out of next gen, so you can't even come there anymore. That's me.
I will also add too within that, and you mentioned you may not have a next gen or a young professionals group, but what I'm noticing is leaders in our community and across the state of Montana, and I think this probably applies to other states, is leaders are clamoring for insights from young people, because not only from you're the next generation, you're the group that's going to lead, but the millennial and Gen Z population is a huge cohort and soon to be the main force in the workforce. It'll represent over the pretty much, I think, greater than the baby boomers and, those types. And so they want our opinion. And so sometimes it's like, you just got to get a seat at the table to go and do it. Like, don't ask questions, kind of be, it's okay to, ask for forgiveness later and just to do something. And so, if you don't have a next gen group or something like that, like be an advocate for yourself and for your fellow colleagues and friends.
Right. So important. And as both of you know, as entrepreneurs and building businesses yourself, you know how important those connections are and being involved in the community and that mentorship piece too. The mentorship, I think, is a really important piece of that. So it's been really fun to be a part of it. And I'll probably still show up to next gen events, even though I may have aged out. But it's so important for business owners to know communication styles and how people are consuming information and trying to, crack, discover the secret sauce of what is going to help them connect to clients and make their ideas, be the next big thing. And it's critical to have that conversation. And I think that's such an important piece that Next Gen does provide. So let's talk more about, we were talking about the team aspect of things. Do we want to dig more into that? Or is there something, Abby, did you want to talk more about maybe the connection and how this was built off of another idea?
Yeah, I mean, we sure can. I think that there's a lot of things that come from the connection piece too. I think one of the biggest things, as you guys were talking, something else that I've thought a lot about for young professionals, right? If you're in Montana, or if you're in a different state, like Colton said, it probably is going to apply to several other people in different spaces. But I think that the more you get involved and the more that you make connections within your community, the more you feel a sense of belonging and the better your community is going to be in the long run.
Right.
So I know for me and my husband here in Billings, this is where we're probably going to choose to stay, and we're going to raise our kids here, and we'll probably retire here. And we want to make sure that we build a community that we're proud of and that our kids are proud of, and that they're proud to call Billings, Montana their home. But I think that goes just a big picture into connection and how that comes together as a whole, and really for communities and businesses and leaders in those communities, really to promote that sense of belonging, to get people to want to stay there and really make their community a better place.
Absolutely. The connection thing is so key. And we all know, being in young professionals, that how important that connection is. But it's been a little bit challenged in the past couple of years, right? With the COVID shutdowns and all of that. So have you all noticed how those interactions have changed, or has it been hard to re-engage people as we get back into live events? Because I love the live events. I miss I miss them when they weren't here. And now they're starting to kind of reemerge again. And it's so fun to be at live events and talk to people and have great conversations. Have you all noticed in the Next Gen group, has that been hard to motivate people, or are people excited to get back into it? What have you noticed from that?
That's a good question. I think that right after COVID, I think that we're kind of struggling with that engagement piece, because people were so used to being at home, or maybe they weren't quite ready to venture out yet. And I feel like I'm an extroverted person just by nature. And I feel like COVID made me an introvert to where I didn't want to go out and I didn't want to see people or have conversations. So I think that there's ebbs and flows to that. But I think what we're seeing a lot of is that people really are starting to come out now, and they really are. They just, I think, have craved the connection piece and getting to know, right, their fellow peers in a different way. So we see ebbs and flows of that, but we're starting to see people coming back, that they're craving that interaction and they're wanting to be involved and they're wanting to be engaged again.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add to that too, is it's really made us evaluate like what's our value add proposition. So what, that goes hand in hand with engagement. And I think that's with all groups, whether it's a professionals group, whether it's a social club, whether it's a service group, whether it's just a, round table of business owners, like we're always constantly evaluating what am I getting out of this? And COVID has given us the out of, like, before COVID, you would say, I probably should go to that, or I probably should join that call, or I probably should go to that conference. Like, I feel obligated to. COVID was like, awesome. That's given me the opportunity to say no. And so now, people are much quicker to say no. I even notice it with myself. If I'm with a friend or with somebody, I'm like, I'm okay. Because our time is so valuable. It's our most valuable resource. And so you just really have to think, okay, is this the value we're providing, or what do they perceive as value? And are we matching that? I think every group is doing that because I think in a post-COVID world that's somewhat hybrid, somewhat in person, somewhat like constant reevaluating, like, are we providing value? And so that we've done a lot to, change our programs on how people meet, how they connect, and maybe just really, it's been hard work. We've had to work really hard to do that. And I think that's probably good coming out of COVID, as it's challenged us to work harder. And I'm sure people on this call who are listening to similar organizations or groups, you're probably noticing like that person who joins via Zoom that has their screen on black and has their microphone, X, like, are they actually there? Are they actually present? Probably not. So how do we get them engaged? How do we get them involved? Because we want them a part of it, but it's just so much easier now to like tune things out because we just have so much going on.
Like, that's so true. Just the nature of business and the nature of how we communicate. And yeah, it's easier to say, it's a little cold outside. I don't know if I'm going downtown tonight, so it's easier to say that. But then always I have to remind myself too, that it's like, that you might miss out on something. And it's not the FOMO effect, but it's like, what if you don't have a conversation? And what if an opportunity emerges? And what if there's something that can be created in such a good energy that I feel that's what I use to kind of get me out of the door and go to those events, is that yes, there's opportunities. People are hungry for that. Their creativity may not have been stifled over the COVID, but it's fun to talk to people and to come up with ideas. And I think there's lots of opportunity, and particularly with entrepreneurs who kind of have that in our blood anyway. So we just have to remind ourselves to keep doing that. And maybe people haven't discovered that. So that's a key thing for next gen to understand. And I'm sure that it's been man, how do we do this? How do we engage people more? How do we get more involvement? I think that's a key question that many people are facing. So tell me about some next gen events. Is there some events that are coming up that we should all be aware of?
Yeah, we do. We do have we have events that happen periodically throughout the month, some that happen weekly, some that just happen once a month. But one of our big events that we have coming up is next week on the 17th. It's called Quarters. It happens once a quarter. So we really nailed it on the unique name there. But we like it because it does combine the three components that we talked about earlier. It combines the access piece, that we're giving our members access maybe to a business here in town. So this quarter, we're going to host it at Rock 31. It's going to be revolving around entrepreneurs, which is really quite cool. And Rock 31 is a great space for that. Colton can tell us a little bit more about it, but we're going to have it at Rock 31. We're going to have a panelist of entrepreneurs who are going to speak to us. So it's the access piece to that, as well as the ongoing education that we're providing. So it's something here in the Billings community that maybe not all of our members or just the people who live here know about. So it's going to be those two pieces, and then the connection piece, because afterwards we do have an after hours where our members can get together and they can connect and get to know one another just on a better level.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, Abby, is with that Quarters event, it's typically our event that's like pretty large, obviously, since we're only doing it 4 times a year. And we have, so just to kind of explain to others on the call, we typically have, like Abby mentioned, the access piece. And so we have the entrepreneurs that are part of like an incubator here in Billings. And so it's with an economic development program. And then the last one we had was actually at the Chancellor of Montana State University, Billings. It was at her house. We had kind of had a Quarters event and had educators from in high school, junior college, workforce development programs, kind of trades, as well as giving a panel on the state of education. The time before that, we had our airport and metro department. Give a like, where are we at in our middle of our airport being renovated, and what does that mean for me as a citizen? What does it mean for me that I see the Met bus lines going around? Like, what does that mean? What is the cost? Like, why aren't there more routes? How is it being utilized for citizens in Billings? In the future, we're having one at the brand new medical school for the DO program here in Billings. And so we get to have kind of a state of medical care and state of healthcare in Billings. So have the two major hospitals in Billings presenting, as well as how that ties into education as well, from a residency program and things like that. So, I think an educated workforce, an educated citizen is a better citizen, in my opinion. And so I think those are the opportunities, and encourage those on the call. If there's opportunities like that for in your community, there probably are there. It's like, you're probably already involved, because this is probably a highly successful, highly engaged group listening to a podcast like this, if you're a part of this network and listening to these. Or if there's not, get something started like this.
Right. It's so important. And I think a few things about that. First of all, I've been to a few quarters events. They've been a lot of fun. But I really like how you're picking very relevant places in the community for us to know about. Like, the airport is a big deal. The medical school is a big deal. These are the Rock 31 just opened their new place for entrepreneurs. Those are all really key things to know about and to be actively involved in. And I think for listeners that aren't in Billings, there's so many that those are the kind of the dialogue and the discourse that develops around those things is so vibrant and so creative that it's such an important part to be a part of. So yeah, I'm going to have to go to the one at Rock 31. I haven't been to Rock 31 yet, so I'm excited to see it. That'll be good. Well, this has been a great interview today. I love learning about NextGen and the opportunities that you provide. Would you both like to close out the interview by just talking about your experience and maybe giving some advice to some potential or current entrepreneurs out there, and how being involved with their community is so important?
Yeah, NextGen has been instrumental in my personal and professional life. Something that we didn't talk about, but one of the things that we do for our NextGen members is that we have a mentorship program where we connect our NextGen members with community leaders here in town. And that is one of our best programs that we offer to our members. And like myself, so many of our other members are in their current careers today because of that mentorship program, or just because of NextGen, myself being one of them. Like I just said, I recently had a career change, and it is only because of NextGen, which is quite cool. So I think like I had talked about earlier, being a part of the community and where we live is really important to me. I feel like, especially in this day and age, with the way things are changing and just the way that our culture is evolving, it's important that our community is a great place and it's a safe space. So I think that being a part of a young professionals group, whatever you have maybe in your city, or if you have a chamber of commerce or you have a young professionals group, whatever that looks like, I think it's so important to get involved and to be engaged with that. One, because it's great to build those connections. And it's important to just, I think, feel the sense of belonging and to continue to give back. So I think for me also, as I have continued to develop professionally, I think just, that's still evolving and that's still changing now,
Sure.
is that I look to find other people who are very different from me and who have very different thought processes and are in different sectors or different industries. And I like to create, right, like a little circle of it's like my mentorship circle, right? That I've built these connections with other individuals, and, they can help me as I continue to grow, and they can help challenge my thought process, and really for me to help grow as a leader, because, and you guys have probably heard it, the listeners have probably heard it, right? Like, if you're the smartest person in the room, there's a problem. So you should surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, who have had more experiences. So that's what I love about NextGen and being involved, is that it has helped me create that community, and it's helped me create that circle of people to help me to continue to help me grow and cheer me on while I do it.
I love those two things. Colton, before we get to you, I wanted to just say, I love the mentorship thing. I'm glad you brought it up. I think that's such a key thing I'm an educator too. So I see that it's so important to have that mentorship piece, but then also to be in a community where you're with like-minded professionals. And yes, there's different ways that we do things and different ways that we do business, but we can learn so much from each other. And I think it's hard to find those communities. But this is a community that we have access to. Love all of that. So Colton, did you have anything to add?
So first, I want to say thank you for having us on. We really appreciate the opportunity and very grateful to be on this. We obviously think a lot of you, and not only personally, but also professionally. So thank you for having us on. Two things that I would probably say just to round out the conversation, I'll circle back to the team. So having a strong team behind you, I think of, having your own personal board of directors, I think is what I've heard is, you have these people that are your cohorts, and that could be, different, either age-wise or career-wise, or different backgrounds or different life experiences. All those people you take advice from, really try to create that cohort and create that group, because it's hard to, all of us are entrepreneurial in some sort of way. Obviously a real focus on people listening to this, but having those people in your corner to bounce ideas off of, to listen, to learn, is really important. And so I think that's been a huge thing for me of being involved in NextGen, is really having a lot of these people that I am a part of NextGen and help lead. They're leading me. I'm not leading them. I'm learning from them just as much, or probably more. They're learning what not to do probably when I'm probably trying to lead the group. So I learn a lot from them. And so that's the one thing, is having a team behind you. And then I think the final part is, Abby and I have talked a lot about community engagement, being a citizen of the city you live in and giving back. There's a call to give back. I think that goes a long ways in your career professionally. People recognize that. And so that can be a lot of different ways on how that manifests itself, whether it's, how you serve, how you volunteer your time, how you give your money, the type of people you do business with, the type of vendors you use, and how you treat all those people. There's a lot of ways to give back to the community. And I think as professionals in whatever city, town you live in, good things come of that when you have that mindset of a service-minded attitude. And so I feel like that's a really big part of what NextGen is we're, helping lead and springboard these young, engaged and energetic citizens of Billings. And I think that's something that can apply to really any professional. So.
Absolutely. Oh, so nice to talk to both of you, professionals leading your young professionals in being more involved in the community too. So many critical things that we talked about today, and so many exciting things about NextGen and a place about that. Just to kind of close things out, as a member of the Strategic Advisor Board, and I'm on a board with 10, there's 10 of us on that board, and we all have very different businesses and very different ways of communication and very different ways of showing our leadership. But we're under one roof because we understand how important it is to be mentored and to have a team as you move forward. And we work with small businesses similar to what you all do, and to understand the needs and understand that there are solutions. We just need a team to help solve them. So this very much aligns with everything that we do over at the Strategic Advisor Board and my publishing group too. So that's a really fun way to go about that. I thank you both, Abby and Colton, for coming on the interview today. I'm really excited to learn more about NextGen. I'm excited for the event coming up at Rock 31. And I'm going to show up even though I'm past the age limit. I'm going to come anyway. But it's going to be really fun. Thank you again. And to our listeners, I look forward to introducing more young leaders to you to talk about how we can create genius in our community and create genius in our business, and how that can do good for everybody. So we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Culture, Communication, and Brand Moments with your host, Shelby Joe Long. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next episode.